There we go. All right. Today I'm going to talk to you all about step one. I'm Phil. I've been in the program ever since I was in my early 20s. I'm 56 years old. I had spells of sobriety, that came and went throughout those 56 years. And there were times, I don't know, I couldn't tell you how many times I was locked up in the psych ward, handcuffed and all that. I'm no different than y'all. You know what I mean? We all kind of been through the same thing. And as far as the alcohol, drugs, or whatever your addiction is. The difference this time is I got these past 6 years is I've actually worked these steps all the way through with the sponsor. And I had always stopped at the 5th step before because there was just stuff I wasn't ready to talk about. But it's the stuff that always got me back out there drinking, But I actually went through them, and so I've heard over my time in the program, which has been, like I said, off and on through 56 years. I've heard all kinds of different approaches to step one and the rest of the steps. And what I'm going to share with you today is a little bit of my understanding of step one. It's not going to be all of it. I don't have time for that tonight. I could talk on this quite extensively, but I'm not. But I can tell you that the way what I'm going to tell you about step one tonight is what's kept me sober for the past 6 years. And it seems to be working because I finally woke up. I finally had that spiritual awakening. It's a place that I've come to learn to live in, and it's pretty cool. So let's look at step one. We admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and that our life had become unmanageable. And there's two parts of that. It's the admission of the powerlessness over the alcohol or the drug or whatever your deal is, right? And then the other part is the unmanageability of life, right? When we read how it works, one of the three pertinent ideas was that we didn't have the ability to manage our own life, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own life. And it's this delusion that we have the capacity and the capability and the intelligence to manage a life of our own. That's the crux of all our suffering. And I think that's why we're going to see that in this first step, right? And so this isn't about controlled drinking. I'm not here to tell you how to control your drinking, okay? Because in reality, with us, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. There's nothing here to control because we can't do it. We're powerless over alcohol. That's the first thing we've got to come to see and admit is that we're powerless. And that powerless I've come to understand as being hopelessness. Hopelessness. As long as I have any hope, any inclination, any idea, any notion that I can go out and drink like a normal person does, I'm hopeless because I will go back out and try it again if I think I can, right? So when I become hopeless and I give up all hope of ever being able to drink like a civilized, normal, or earth person or whatever. This is Mark. He's one of us. Have a seat, Mark. But when I give up that notion of being able to ever drink normally again, or think that I can drink alcohol without having the same set of circumstances come at me that had come to me in the past from drinking it, doing the same stupid shit over, thinking I'll get a different result from it, right? That's the insanity of it, thinking that this time it'll be different. This time I can drink and I won't end up in jail. This time I can drink and I can just make it just one. This time I can drink or do my dope and not suffer the consequences that come with it. And there's always consequences. There's always consequences to whatever the hell we're doing. And with us, the consequences of taking that first drink or that first line of Coke or that first hit off a crack pipe or the first shot out of a syringe, those consequences are pretty heavy for us, you know, and they're not something to be taken lightly. But when we do go out, don't we kind of take them lightly? We just think, what, you know, it's like, what the fuck, you know, and I just go out and do it anyway. And so we have to look at the consequences as something that we don't want to take lightly. Because it's life and death for us. It's freedom or bondage for us. But when we get to that place where we can finally admit we're hopeless, I just can't do this shit anymore. You know, I can't go out and drink anymore and think things that are going to be any different. That's our bottom. Now that's where the real bottom is, because you're hopeless. And until you become hopeless, you haven't reached your bottom. Until you become hopeless, life will give you more pain. Life will get shittier. Your heart will break more. Your mind will become more screwed up. It'll hurt, you know, until you get to that place that you become hopeless. That's where that's bottom. That's rock bottom right there. That's where hope begins, because when you're hopeless, when you don't think you can do it anymore, then that's where you can start to grow. That's where you can start to recover. But you have to be there first. I've heard over my time in AA many times that the step you got to get right is this one. The rest of the steps, you know, will work, but if you don't have this one, you can't even do the rest of them. And you're just bullshitting yourself if you think that you can do the rest of them if you don't have this one down pat. This is the most important thing. You have to reach that spot of hopelessness. Okay? And then we look at that, then what we look at is where the hope's coming from now. Now we're hopeless. We can't do this. So we have to look at what's causing this notion that I can go out and manage life, that I can go out and drink and, you know, let it come, things will be different this time. And there's this delusion that we can manage our own life, and it's the belief that we have the ability to manage life that makes it unmanageable. It's holding to that notion that we can manage it, that it becomes unmanageable. Because see, life isn't like a wild horse. It ain't like a wild bronco that you can break and throw a saddle on and control it. Life ain't like that. And if we just meditate on that a minute, that's quite obvious. You don't choose to fall in love, you just do. It just happens. You know, you don't choose a lot of the things that happen, they just happen. And, you know, if you don't have a choice, you feel what you do, right? You don't decide, I'm not going to feel sad and just not feel sad. You feel what you do. That's life. You can't control it. And as long as we're trying to control it, we suffer, right? We sit around and go, I shouldn't feel this way. I should feel that way. I shouldn't think this way. I ought to think this way. You know, and we lay these trips on ourselves, right? These laws for being upon ourselves. And what we do is we make life to be really hard and really heavy when we do that. It becomes a real drag to live. Because we're trying to make the living go our way rather than just living, rather than just being lived. You know what I mean? So this is an invitation to feel, not to choose what you feel. That's called sensuality. What this is a call to is sensitivity. This is when we're sensitive, we simply feel what's here. We feel it all. We don't pick and choose. We don't go, I'm going to feel this, I'm not going to feel that. The attempts to feel this and that to cling to that feeling and manage those feelings. Well, that's why we're doing this shit, right? This is like we're doing this stuff. I mean, it comes in all kinds of forms, or we're eating, or whatever, you know. But and that's called sensuality, you know. And even in the Bible, you can read, and it'll talk about sensuality and the problems that arise from that. But what this isn't about that. This is about sensitivity. One of the earmarks of this age we're in is a lack of sensitivity. Even in the Bible, Jesus said, in the end times, the love of most would grow cold. Well, they're all wrapped up in trying to, with society in general, it has this idea that we need to manage life. We need to control it. We need to control how we feel and all that, right? And in the process, we're always trying to get something, rather than letting things just be here and be with them as they are. And in that trying to grasp and get and trying to control, we lose sensitivity. We do. Our heads are always going, bzzz, you know what I mean? And I'd be talking right to you, not even see your eyes doing this. You know, not even picking up on that you're having a bad day, or that something good's going on with you because of that. I'm not, because my head's someplace else rather than here. And sensitivity always brings with it presence of heart and mind. Sensitivity comes as we become reintegrated, because what we've done is become disintegrated, where our heads are over here, our hearts are over here, our bodies are over here, and our hearting in what we're doing. We're at work, the day's dragging on because our head's somewhere else. We don't want to be there, right? We don't want to be there. And it just makes life to be a drag when we fight and resist what is. But when we become sensitive, we can sit with that silence that's just here. It's always here. And be okay with it. And feel what's here. And when we can just feel what's here, then the feelings turn into a tool to awaken us. But when we do this, we're stepping out of reality. You know, sensitivity is the way to connect with what's really here. It's not to try to change it, not to try to force it, not to try to manipulate life, but to submit yourself to life as it is in the moment. You know, think of life as being God. Don't put God in this little box that your mind makes him to be, but open yourself up to all of it. Because God is a lot bigger than you think he is. Life is a lot bigger than you think it is. You know, and you don't get it by thinking it. You get it, you understand it by living it. You know, this is about resurrecting, coming back to life itself. You know, and what's keeping us from that is our reasoning, our thinking that we know. So the acceptance of that hopelessness is where we start from, basically. And this isn't about fighting. This isn't about willpower. This isn't about, I'm going to not drink today. It ain't a white knuckle sort of thing. That ain't what this is about at all. It ain't like you can take and crap your alcoholism out with a big shove, you know, or your drug addiction. It just don't work like that. The thing with trying to do it that way by willpower alone is you're using power. You're trying to overpower rather than overcome with love. There's a difference between overpowering and overcoming, right? You know, if I take you and force you down, I'm overpowering you. But if I just come over you with love, you know, that's different. You know what I mean? When you're overcome with love, there's no resistance there. There's no fight. You know? So you can overcome your addiction, you can overcome your disease with love, or you can fight it with your willpower, right? The thing is, whatever you gain by power has to be maintained by power. And alcohol is patient. Heroin is patient. It will wait for you to run out of power. It ain't going nowhere. But your power is going somewhere. You know, so where do you want to put it? Do you want to put it into fighting this, which is futile, because you're not going to, in time you'll give up, your power will run out. Your ambition will only take you so far. So the ambition, the overpowering, the fighting it, you know, that ain't how to do this thing. This deal doesn't get done like that. Recovery doesn't happen like that. It doesn't. It really doesn't. This is about surrendering that notion, surrendering your reasoning, surrendering the notion that you think you're right. You know, surrendering the notion that you think you know shit. Because if you knew shit, you wouldn't be in the shit that you're in, right? If you knew shit, you wouldn't be in the shit you're in, right? Isn't that true? I know, I found that to be true with me, you know. And as long as I thought I knew shit, I stayed in my shit. You know, I really did. but so it's a surrendering, right? It's not a fight. It's a surrender. And see, that's the difference between being resolved and being ambitious. When you're ambitious, you're in a fight. When you're resolved, you're surrendered. You just like, don't fight it no more. You don't fight it no more. You don't fight to try to control it. You give up trying to control it. There's no fight with it, right? In the Tao Te Ching, a guy named Lao Tzu wrote that years ago. He's a pretty wise little guy. He said that no one can contend with the wise man because he doesn't contend. You know? There's a program called A Course in Miracles, and they have a saying in there that our safety lies in our defenselessness. Our safety lies in our defenselessness. Where am I going with this? You know what I mean? Our safety lies in our defenselessness. And then like Lao Tzu saying stuff like, no one can fight with the wise man because he doesn't fight. You know, it isn't the offender that starts the war. You can take a poke at me, right? But if I don't defend myself, there's really no fight. There's no fight. There's no war. It's always the one who defends himself that starts the war, that starts the fight. It takes two to fight. If one won't fight, he's irresistible. Right? That's how we overcome with love. We're not overpowering, right? So we're irresistible when we just surrender. We're irresistible when we surrender. You see that? We're irresistible when we surrender. Because you can't win a war with me that I'm not in. Alcohol ain't going to win if I don't fight with it. I surrender it. I don't fight with it. I surrender it. I turn it over to a higher power. I turn my reasoning. I don't fight with my reasoning either. And that's what's tripping me up right there in the first step too. Because we met with those powers, so we're calling their lives to become unmanageable. But, you know, the way we try to manage our life is through what we think. We think, right? We're always trying to impose our ideas of what's right and wrong upon ourselves and and then we project those upon the world, right? So I try to manage my life by telling myself what's right and wrong. This is right, that's wrong. I lay all these trips on myself. I lay expectations on myself that I'll never live up to. Then I'll kick myself in the ass and I'll go drink. That's where my best reasoning is getting me. That's where my best thinking is taking me, you see? That's where that flow takes me. That's where my best thinking takes me. Bill W. said in the big book at one point, he says, there comes a place where we cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. And if you read through that big book, you're going to read that one day because it's in there. So this is about going about life in a whole different way than what you were conditioned to flow with it as you were taught. From you were a little kid, we were taught to fight. We were taught to defend ourselves. By you know, and we see this all, and we can see the fruits of that, where that takes us, just by looking at the state of listening to the news every night. It's our defending ourselves that leads to wars, to the great reasoning that allows us to create atomic bombs, to, you know, guillotines, to hangman's nooses, to prisons, to, you know what I mean? And we, in our best reasoning, we F ourselves up. We mess ourselves up. So that's where my best reasoning is going to get me. It'll get me drunk every time. Solomon said in the book of Proverbs in the Bible, King Solomon was said to be one of the wisest men on earth ever, you know what I mean, as far as kings go. And he said this, he said, guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it flow the flow of life. And for years I read that as if I was supposed to defend the ideas, the beliefs I had, right, about God. But it's really not about that. It's not like that. It's not about defending this faith. It's not about defending my religious persuasion. It isn't defending what I think is right and wrong. No, to guard my heart is really about guarding myself from being defensive. Because it's that defensiveness that puts up the wall that stops this flow. This just comes natural when we drop the wall. The good life comes out of us. And life is very good. There's a really good life within every one of us. Jesus said the kingdom of God is inside you, it's at hand, it's here. But it's our defenses that we put up around us that keep that flow from happening. You know? So when we guard our heart with all diligence, it's about guarding it from being guarded. That's what that really means. To let down your defenses and experience life on its terms in this moment, as it is when it's here, and be lived. 1 second here to get back to where I was. Okay. I talked about that. Our best reasoning, you know, when I was thinking about that this afternoon before I came here, I was thinking about where my reasoning, where that gets me and where that comes from and all that stuff. And one of the things I thought about was in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, you hear the story of Adam and Eve and the snake, right? And this tree of knowledge that they ate of, that they were told not to eat of. And so, way back then, they got offered knowledge, right? Reasoning. They got offered the ability to know good and evil. To know what the truth was not. To know what the truth was not. Because see, if we tend to lean that way, and we see this thing called the devil, called the father of lies, right, and has no capability to speak truth, that thing couldn't offer anything that was true. You know, so the enlightenment was actually a blindness. You know, in the enlightenment that was offered by the serpent, because it said that their eyes would be open when they ate it, right? So they were offered this enlightenment, this ability to think for themselves. Because before that, they didn't think for themselves. You know, where am I going with that? Okay, where am I going with that? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not under your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path. He'll lead you through life, right? Lean not under your own understanding, your own reasoning. Don't try to manage life with your own reasoning. So there's a different way than this reasoning that tells me that I know something else. You know, this is all about the heart. Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, there's a book in AA. It's called The Language of the Heart. It's a good book if you ever get a chance to read it. But this is what it's about. It's about the heart. It's about being led forth with trust rather than reasoning. Living life with trust rather than reasoning. So when we see that this is what the first step's entailing, is we begin to see that our reasoning is fallible. It leads us into things that are futile. And if we won't accept that, what life will do is turn us over to our own devices and let us try for ourselves and fall on our ass. And when we get tired of falling on our ass, we'll be ready to let go of our own reasoning, won't we? You know, and that's the other part of that bottom. It's just letting go of your own reasoning. You know, to repent means to turn around, right? So I'm going to turn around from my reasoning and follow my heart rather than my reasoning. And this heart, it will lead me in the right spot. You know, if I keep peace of heart, and then I learn to tell time, everything becomes different, right? I don't tell time with my heart anymore, my mind anymore with my watch. I tell time with my heart. I know what the right time and the wrong time to do things is by the conscience that's come back alive in me. Right? But it isn't figured out with the head. I have to abandon that thinking that I know. And instead of thinking I know that I think. And that my thinking is only going to trip me up. Right? Then we can make a decision. Once we come to believe that, once we come to believe that there is a higher intelligence than our own reasoning, that can restore us to the sanity of following our heart and trusting what life is bringing us moment by moment by moment. We don't need to know it all anymore. We don't have to have it all figured out anymore. We're okay with life as it is. And the more that we stay there in that space, being okay with it is, and being aware of it, that we're just sitting with it, being with it, flowing with it, we learn from that it's faithful to do that over and over and over, moment by moment by moment, you know. And then we can, in the more moments we spend like that, the more accustomed we become to the peace, and we learn to live in that. The rest of the steps, I'd say the first 3 steps, are especially step 1 and second and third step, because that involves a decision to turn, right? This third step is a decision to turn. It's a repentance step, turning around our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand it. You know, and it's a completely different understanding now. It's an understanding that comes from here and not from here. From there, we begin to look at the thoughts that are tripping us up, at what we're telling ourselves. We begin to look at our fears and our resentments, the things that we're ashamed of, that we try to cover up with this ego. To where, you know what ego's like, I'm the bad man, I'm the religious guy, you know, I'm the comedian, I'm this and that. See, you don't see me. So that you don't see that I'm scared, so that you don't see I'm ashamed. So you don't see that I've been hurt. You know? Here, with these steps, we're looking at that shit that hurts us. We're looking at that shit we're ashamed of. We're looking at that shit that we're scared of, right? And we're making a list of that stuff, putting it on paper, and then we're telling somebody about it. And when we tell somebody about it, it takes it from in here, puts it out here, and it's over with. We're done with it. Yeah, I'll be done in a second. The next step is making amends, because whatever you have a guilty conscience over, it's gonna become an obsession in your mind. When you get all this stuff cleared out, there's this beautiful emptiness. There's this beautiful space of silence and stillness, that you're in touch with life as it's happening in the moment. Then everything you do is working out. And you just sit back and watch. And then you continue to keep an eye on it. You just walk in these principles, and the way you keep it is to give it away, just like I'm doing with you all tonight. That's all I got.
Thank you, Phil, very much. Ryan,
Hey, Ryan.
you see it.